everybody. Welcome to our Fluid Thinking Live event. My name is Stephannie Bohr, and I'm the new brand manager here at Peak Commercial and Industrial. I'm so honored to be your host today. And today we're going to be talking about diesel anti-gel. And we have our resident rock star on our diesel fuel additives, Mr. Steve Waard. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Stephannie. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited about talking to customers and our distributors about winter diesel additivization and how we can help with our Peak products.
Excellent. We appreciate you being here. So, are there any Game of Thrones fans?
Dun, 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 dun,
I am a fan.
Oh, we're huge fan.
Yeah. Well,
Spoiler.
Ned Stark always said winter is coming. And so we are here to prepare you for the winter season. So today we are going to be talking a little bit about making sure that our customers are prepping for the winter season, that you got some great tips and some key terms to get them prepared.
Yeah.
So before we get started, though, I have a couple of housekeeping tips. Yeah, we got to get all prettied up here. Just give us a second. Today, this video will be available after today's event, so feel free to share it with those that couldn't join us today.
Good.
And then also, we have a Q&A session at the end of this event. So at the bottom of your screen, there is going to be a section for questions. So grab your pen and your paper, and definitely take a quick listen and write down some questions, because the first 10 people to ask a question during our Q&A session will win a $10 gift card. I mean, Steve, how cool is that?
Oh, that's cool. The pressure's on me to make sure I answer all the questions,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
That'll be fine. That'll be good.
So first 10 people receive a $10 gift card, so definitely get prepared for that. So let's go ahead and get started and share a little bit about some key terms and some best practices for the season.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Stephannie. And for those that have attended my Fluid Thinking Live events over the past year, I've always tried to talk about key terms that you should understand, try to keep it fairly simple when it comes to additives and diesel fuel additives. For the winter season, there's kind of 4 key terms that I like to talk about and remind our audience today about as well. The first one is wax. All regular number 2 diesel, ULSD, whatever you want to call it, all the diesel out there has some level of wax in solution. You can't see it.
Okay.
What happens when the ambient temperature decreases, depending on how that diesel fuel is made, that wax will come out of solution and you'll start seeing the crystal or the wax molecules visibly from the eye. And so it's just, if you hear paraffin or wax, it's just a function that all number 2 diesel has wax in solution. So that's key term number 1. Key term number 2, and thanks, Sean's quick on the
Hey,
on
Uncle
the slides.
Sean, thanks for helping out today.
So the temperature grade here. The second key term, that I always like to talk about is cloud point.
Okay.
So cloud point, when the wax crystals start coming out of solution, the cloud point of the temperature, the cloud point of the fuel is that temperature where you can visibly see the wax crystals. The fuel gets a little hazy, and once again, Sean's fast. You can see that right there. That's the cloud point where you can start visibly seeing the wax crystals. That is an important temperature to understand when you're looking at your diesel fuel program.
Okay.
Back to the other slide fast. Again, Sean, thank you. So then the next term that I like to talk about, which is my favorite acronym actually of all acronyms, is CFPP, which is the cold filter plugging point.
CFPP, definitely write that down.
Write it down. So CFPP is a temperature that's been identified when you flow the fuel through this test that Sean's put up on the screen. The fuel will flow through this test. There's a little filter, and it starts lowering the temperature of that test, that little tube thing, to basically freeze it down to find out that temperature where the fuel will stop flowing through that test. It's a test that's supposed to mimic real world conditions.
Okay.
And so that's a temperature that's important for customers to understand how their fuel will actually operate in the real world, and when that fuel will potentially gel in their trucks. Knowing the cold filter plugging point temperature is an important temperature to know.
Okay, great.
Then the last temperature, which you'll hear as well from different sources, is the pour point. And the pour point is in a lab, in a beaker, when that fuel has been frozen to a lower temperature than even CFPP, that's when the fuel becomes gelled itself.
Okay.
But it's an important temperature to know. It'll always be lower than the CFPP because it doesn't mimic real world conditions. but it's an important temperature that customer, you might hear it in talking to your fleet yourself, or when you're talking to a fuel supplier, they tell you what their pour point is. It's a good temperature to know,
Okay.
and that's what it represents. In my view, and what I always recommend to customers is always try to understand what your CFPP is, so that you know how the fuel will react when your driver's out on the road.
Okay, excellent. So in past live events that we've
Yeah.
done, we've always talked about water, and water can be good and it can be bad.
Yeah.
So in this case, tell us a little bit about how water impacts.
Yeah, and you're probably right, Stephanie. I probably should add that as the fifth term we should
Okay.
use for when we're talking about winter additization, because water, we all need it, but water will inevitably be in the diesel fuel tank. It comes from within the fuel itself. It'll drop out because there's less sulfur to hold it into solution, so water will drop out of solution in the fuel itself. There might be leaks in the tank. When the driver comes in and fills up your tank, he might pull the plug in the little canister where the fill point is, which might have collected water, and that water goes into your fuel tank. Condensation, human air, all humidity from the vent stacks themselves on these tanks. Water can show up in a lot of different places. It'll always be in the fuel tank, a diesel fuel tank, at some point throughout the year.
Gotcha.
It's important that customers try to manage that as best they can, because what happens is that when water, even if it's solubilized in the fuel, as water is going through your system, it can sit on the filters, the filaments of the filters. It can sit on, it can be on the fuel line in the truck as condensation along that fuel line in the truck. And water will freeze faster than fuel will gel.
Okay.
And so that water will freeze and will make whatever hole or hole on the filter, it'll make whatever that micron was, it'll make it smaller because the ice crystals will form and make that hole a bit smaller, so that fuel that would have normally flowed through that filter gets caught because of the fact that the filter has been frozen.
That makes sense.
And we got some great pictures here, Sean, if you get a moment. Oh, great. Thanks, Sean.
Oh, wow.
So those are frozen filters. What has happened, like I said, the water froze on the filaments, made the hole smaller, and then it just collected the wax as it was flowing through the filter itself.
Okay.
And people think that's because of wax, but in actuality, it's caused by the water freezing on the filter and forcing and clogging up the wax that was coming out of solution anyways. It was cloudy fuel.
Okay.
It should have normally flowed through that filter. Because the holes got smaller because of the water, the filter clogs up. And we have another great picture of an example of what looks like it's the wax is the issue,
right.
But what happened is actually it's the water in the system that caused the issue.
Now, wasn't there a fleet, before we got on camera, we were talking about a fleet that had some issues, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so last year up in northern Wisconsin, we had one of those, we've had warm winters for the past couple of years, but we had one of those spikes that we get an Alberta clipper that came down, and we had a huge temperature drop up in northern Wisconsin.
Okay.
We had a customer up there, and all the filters clogged up.
Oh, wow.
And so we went up there and we took a look at the system, how they additivated the fuel. There's a lot of different things that we learned in that process. But one of the things that was very clear is that because of the environment that fleet was operating with above ground tanks and the vents and how they were managing the water, which they hadn't managed the water.
Oh, okay, got it.
Even though the filters looked like they were clogged up because of the wax, what we determined, because the level of water in the system was so high and was so much in the fuel itself, solubilized in the fuel itself, that it was actually caused by water. And so what we learned from that is that customers really need to manage water throughout the year. And this issue, if you're a distributor sales team, when you talk to your fleet managers, or if you're a fleet manager yourself, make sure, especially for the first cold spike that we have in a year, if there's ways to lower the amount of water in your system now, do it.
Okay.
Because we see that this problem kind of goes away as the year progresses, because then anti-gel does play a role in helping moving some of the water out depending on what anti-gel you use. But that it's really, the problem really occurs in the beginning of the season. That's why I'm really glad we're talking about this now, is that if you have a customer that might not managing the water properly, talk to them now about trying to get rid of some of that water from the tank bottom so that you reduce the chance of these things happening in the fleet when we do get that cold spike.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So
Sure.
I know that you've been around this industry for, I don't know, since the birth of Christ.
Well, a long time. I'm not sure about that.
It's a long enough time, man.
Long enough
you've
time.
got the experience,
17
the
years, yep.
expertise. That's why I call him the resident rock star, because he's been around a long time. And so let's talk a little bit about some good winter treating practices to be proactive and preventative.
And what's great about, I have like 5 key things that I think is important. So if you got a pen and paper, please write this down, because this is what I used as well when I talked to that fleet up in northern Wisconsin. The first one is know your diesel source. And also, when you know your diesel source, make sure that you're buying the diesel from the same place throughout the season, because it's important to understand when you know your source, you know what the cloud point of the fuel is, if you know what the pour point grade, or if you get the fuel tested to understand what the CFPP is. If you get it from one source throughout the year and you know how that fuel will operate with, how that fuel's temperature grade is today, then you can put the right level of anti-gel and should feel at least better assurance that your fuel will continue to operate throughout the winter.
That makes sense.
So that's step number 1, know your diesel source. Step number 2, or good practice number 2, is do additivate the fuel tank right before the fuel is dropped into the tank. What we had in Wisconsin is a distributor took their 2.5 gallon jug of anti-gel concentrate.
Okay.
They knew they were going to get a fuel delivery in about 4 hours. They went in and poured this additive into their fuel storage tank. Then
4 hours before.
4 hours before, temperature dropped, and what happened is that the additive sunk to the bottom, and that fuel that got dropped on top of it never properly got mixed in with the anti-gel.
Gotcha.
So as soon as you see the truck coming down, you run out, or you have your employee run out, pour the splash blend, the diesel additive, the 2.5 gallon jug, or whatever you're using at your facility, drop it in then into the fuel tank and then pour your diesel fuel in.
Okay.
It's always a good practice anyways with additives, is always to, right before you put the fuel on, put the additive in first, even at a truck, and that the turgidity, I think that's the word.
That's a good word.
The turgidity of the fuel coming onto the additive as it's being put into the tank will mix it up properly.
Got it.
Third thing in this good winter treating practices, and this is a tough one, but if you know your cloud point of your fuel, say it's 0 degrees, if it's possible, additivate your fuel at least 10 degrees above your cloud point of your fuel. So if it's 0 degrees, you know your cloud point of your fuel is 0 degrees, and it's 11 degrees Fahrenheit, you should feel comfortable that when you additivate and pour that fuel on top of it, it should mix in well. What happens if if you're within that 10 degree point, the fuel may start having wax that you might not see, and therefore the additive might not work so well in trying to keep those molecules small. It's not easy, and in real world conditions, I know it can be difficult. So I always refer back to step number 2 is additivate the fuel at the same time, or nearly at the same time when the fuels get dropped. So you know the fuel will be warm, so therefore it reduces the chance of the additive not working properly. But if there is, when the ambient temperature is at least 10 degrees above the fuel's cloud point, that's the greater chance of success that additive is going to mix properly.
Okay, well, at least you give them a couple of options to think about.
Correct, exactly. 4th step, and this is common sense as well, but do it consistently.
Okay.
Don't just do it when you know if the Weather Channel is telling you it's going to drop tomorrow, and just do it for tomorrow's load and then skip it for a few weeks and do it again. What happens is that all those loads that you might have that you should have addivated aren't addivated in between the 2 cold spikes. And what happens is that once you do put additive in, you kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The effectiveness, you've diluted the effectiveness of the additive, because you have fuel that hasn't been addivated, and you have fuel that's addivated, and overall your fuel system is below or has been diluted. And so it's very important that if you're in the northern states, you should be addivating now, folks, and you should consistently, for every fuel drop, additivate until March. and therefore you reduce the chances that you will have undiluted fuel in your system throughout the year. And then you're prepared for any cold spikes or anything that comes from Canada that comes down in terms of cold temperatures. You're prepared, your fuel system's prepared to handle it.
Okay, great.
And then the fifth thing, finally, is good housekeeping. So make sure if you're a fleet, if you have filters with a larger micron for the summer, change those filters to the the other way, sorry. If you have lower micron filters for the summer, make sure you've changed them and put the higher micron filters in the winter. It just helps when the fuel achieves that cloud point, the fuel should still be able to flow through the filter. We see a lot of systems out there today, a lot of engines that have really tight filtration. You should try to increase the size of the microns during the winter just to allow for that fuel to flow through, and you'll reduce the chances of wax clogging up those filters. And if you can, like I said earlier, take the tank bottoms that you have at your site and try to drain the water out of them. Try to reduce as much of the water as you can in the system so you can reduce the chances of the fuel freezing or the water in the fuel freezing and freezing up lines within the system itself.
Okay, so basically you're saying to the customers and our distributors
Yep.
to basically be proactive in their maintenance.
Proactive and consistent.
Okay.
Don't be sporadic. Be consistent when you're managing your fuel system.
Okay, well, it sounds like you've provided some great tips
Yep.
and some great best practices.
Thanks.
So let's share, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So let's share a little bit more about the different products that can help during this winter season.
Okay, great. When I developed the formulas that we use at Old World, one of the key problems that we have in this industry is that if you go from Illinois to Iowa to Idaho, the fuel can be different from each location that your truck driver is filling up at.
Okay.
And so it's on how it's manufactured. All of them will have different cloud points or gelling points. And so it's really, it's a dynamic in the industry that what I've tried to do with our additive pack is that all our anti-gels have been tested across a wide variety of fuels.
Okay.
And across a wide variety of states. So this dynamic that you'll see here, this is just a sample of different gelling points that you might find throughout the United States based on all the different samples that we've taken.
Okay.
And what I've done with working with our additive suppliers is basically developed a formula that will consistently drop the gelling points across those same states significantly enough so that customers should feel comfortable that if their trucks are operating in these different areas, that their fuel is protected.
So regardless if they're in New York or Nevada, you have one product across the country
Yep.
that's going to help all of our customers.
Correct. That's
Wow.
how we've designed it. There's no guarantees. There's always
course.
there's a chance that there's some other kind of fuel that's been put into the system that's heavily in wax, and so it might struggle, or you might have to add a little bit more additive in it. But we're testing, and we continuously test to make sure our additives are operating with the fuels that most customers will find out there today in the
Okay.
northern area.
Well, great. Well, let's get to the actual products that we have available for our customers.
Great. So the first product that we have is Peak Anti-Gel Regular.
Okay.
So we offer this in totes and drums only.
Okay.
And this Peak Anti-Gel product contains the cold flow improver, which is the anti-gel product.
Okay, anti-gel.
So it contains anti-gel, cold flow improver for me. It contains de-icers, so to help manage that water that might be solubilized in the fuel and kind of reduce the chances of the fuel icing up.
Okay.
And then it contains a wax anti-settling agent, or my second favorite acronym, WASA.
WASA. Okay.
It contains WASA, which I've said in previous Fluid Thinking Live events, helps keep that wax crystals suspended over a period of time so that reduces the chance that the wax crystals start glomming onto each other.
Okay.
And so we think with that formula that we've put together, we have a really strong anti-gel product that if you're a customer that if you can operate with a 1 gallon of additive to 1,500 gallons of
1,500, okay.
diesel, this product is a great product and a great anti-gel product for you.
Okay.
So the second product that we have in our offer is anti-gel concentrate. So just like the word means, this is more concentrated. So this 1 gallon of additive will treat 3,000 gallons.
Okay, so versus 1,500, you have 3,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, I've put more cold flow improver in here, so you'll get a so that for the concentration. That's why
Sure.
you go from 1 to 3,000. So you have cold flow improver, de-icers, and some wax anti-settling agent in this. But it's basically a concentrated version. So it's from a price treated cost per treated gallon basis. It's the best buy if you want to buy the more concentrated version. Some customers are just used to using the regular size, but we do offer a concentrated size as well.
Got it.
The third product is Peak Anti-Gel Premium, which is my favorite because it's multifunctional. It's the premium product.
Okay.
So it not only contains the cold flow improver,
Okay.
it contains the de-icers,
Okay.
it contains the wax anti-settling agents.
Great.
It also contains a little cetane.
Oh,
So,
okay. So, this is the
so
fourth
what
item.
happens is, when you get a cold start, if you have a cranky engine that doesn't turn over easily in the morning, a little added cetane will help turn those engines over a bit further.
Okay.
And so we added a little cetane in there, and we've also added a little detergents to help clean any deposits that might be on the critical engine parts as well. So it's a true multifunctional additive pack. And so 1 gallon of this additive will treat 1,500 gallons of diesel fuel in our commercial variety.
Got it.
So we offer from a commercial concentration, that 1 to 1,500. We actually offer it in a 32-ounce bottle. It's a little more expensive than what you might find at the retail shelf because it's a different treat rate, which I'll talk to in a second.
Okay.
But we also offer that in drums and totes as well.
Got it.
And then, like I said, at retail, we offer a 32-ounce bottle. Let me see, 32-ounce bottle that it has a lower treat rate. It's more what you might use or you find at the retail shelves. This one treats up to 160 gallons of product. So this is one of those products that you can, your customer or your driver can pour it right in before he fills up his truck, and that will protect that fuel completely.
That makes sense. Okay.
When you compare it to some of the competition out here, this is one of the better treat rates for a retail pack that's available out there.
Okay, got it.
Then the fourth and final product that we have in our offer is the emergency diesel thaw product. And the emergency diesel thaw product is not a preventative product because of the way the molecule has been made. There's alcohols in here that you don't want the engine to be in contact over a long period of time. But this is a product that every cab of a truck should have in there during the winter season, because what happens is inevitably something has happened or the conditions were right and fuel is gelled up. And so this product will re-liquefy gel fuel, so the customer or the driver will need to go pull out the filter, put this in like a little pail or bucket, pour a little of this on that filter itself, pour a little bit of this into the filter housing itself, and then pour some of it, the rest of it into the fuel tank. And within 15 minutes, the filter will be unfrozen.
Oh, wow.
The diesel fuel that froze up will reliquefy. The diesel that's frozen, the filter housing will reliquefy, and then start reliquefying the fuel that's in the tank itself.
Okay.
The customer puts the filter back in and then turns the engine on. It'll start, and then with the heat of the engine kind of flowing, everything else should start flowing through the system. So this is one of those products that on an emergency, when it happens, the driver has the ability to reliquefy gelled fuel within 15 minutes and get them out back on the road.
So basically, it's a great part of the first aid that should be in every cab.
It's a first aid kit, exactly, and I think it should be in every cab. And we offer that in a 32-ounce bottle, which I think is perfect for a cab.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. So you have provided some great tips, some great best practices, some key terms to remember.
Yep.
And so why don't we go to our viewers? And so those who are ready, go ahead and get your questions ready, because the first 10 viewers who actually ask a question during this time of the session will receive a $10 gift card. So let's go ahead and go to our online questions.
All right.
So, you ready?
Oh boy, here we go.
All right, so, as you get a little older, glasses are
trust me,
needed.
I'm
Yep,
at
I got
there as
some
well.
readers. Okay, so Peak Anti-Gel, PKDAG32, treats at a rate of 1 to 640.
Yep.
So the question is, can you use that treatment rate at below 0 degrees?
Yes, you can. Like I talked about, obviously you want to treat your fuel, at the ambient temperature within that 10 degrees of the cloud point. And there's some competitive product out there that always recommends you double dosing their additive at 0 degrees. it's always a good thing to double dose, but this product will perform at 0 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay,
Excellent. At this treat rate.
Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Yep.
So this question comes from John. Does diesel fuel go bad after an extended period?
It go bad. Well, it does if it's not. What happens is that fuel over time, if it's not turned quite a bit, we see this a lot in like ag customers and construction fleets or off-road fleets. If it's not turned over quickly enough, fuel over a period of time, the thermal stability of the fuel will start to decay is probably the wrong word, and the fuel will start looking a little darker.
Okay.
So yes, fuel over a long period of time, if it's been sitting in a tank for a long period of time and hasn't really moved a lot, the thermal stability of the fuel could go bad, and what can happen is the fuel starts turning a little black, like I said, and there's this dynamic called asphaltenes that kind of form, which is this deposits, it's carbon deposits, and those things can create issues when you try to put it through the fuel system.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So I know that with a lot of our distributors and some customers that are on the line, what are some maybe key questions they should be asking their customers or their maintenance fleets or anything to just be more preventative?
Yeah.
Some key selling points.
So obviously we talked a little bit about the winter treating practices, and I think those 5 things, make sure if you're out there talking to your fleet managers out there, or you're talking to your own team itself, make sure you're mindful of those winter practices. I always ask when I talk to customers or fleet managers, what is the testing program that you're doing?
Okay.
We have the ability at Old World to provide fuel testing kits so that customers, not for every load obviously, but once in a while it's important to take a look at what your fuel is, what it's showing in the lab as being at CFPP, so that you can really understand and how that fuel should operate in the real world, and then you can kind of decide or work what is the best anti-gel program, how much do you want to put in there to depress that cold filter plugging point further. So I always ask customers about what's your testing program, how often are you doing it?
Okay.
And it's important, I think, especially in the beginning of the season, if you know you're going to get fuel from the same source, make sure you have your fuel tested, and throughout the season double check that your additive is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And the other thing I always ask about as well is find out what kind of additives are being used currently today. If they're not using an additive program, obviously I'm interested in, or I want people to understand that we have a great product that's been designed to handle across a wide variety of fuels, like I said earlier. But if they are treating, make sure you compare what the competitive product is claiming they can do, and the cost of doing that. Compare that to our products, and I think we're a very competitive product in terms of not only on a cost per treated gallon basis, but also in terms of performance. And I have all kinds of documentation behind these products to support what I think are very strong claims in the industry.
Okay, fantastic. We do have a question in from Dan from Texas. And how does the PKD AG32 retail peak anti-gel compares to Howe's as far as treat rate?
So the treat rate for Howe's, there's a couple versions out there. The one that you see in the apple juice container, I always pick on that, sorry about that, but you know what I'm talking about. It's the that 64-ounce bottle. That additive treat rate in that bottle is the same as the treat rate for this bottle that we have in the PKDAG. What they recommend on their bottle is that when the temperature gets to 0, double the treat rate, where I'm telling you, you don't need to do that with this product.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
It's a good question.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that question, Dan. So that concludes our event today.
Great.
Steve, is there anything last minute or last piece of information you'd like to share?
So as always, if there are any questions about additization or diesel additization as we get into the winter, if there's any questions about winter additization, please contact your peak sales representative if you have that customer. If you have any questions that you think somebody like myself who's been in the business for a long time, I'm more than willing to field those questions myself. Go through the websites on peak, www.peakhd.com.
Correct.
And those questions will get to me. I'm here to support not only our customers or as well as our end users in making sure they have a strong diesel winter program to keep them running.
Right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and watch for the next brand live that's going to be coming up in December. We're going to be talking all about the new Blue Def equipment, so be prepared for that. That is going to be happening on December 6th, so watch for that coming out. And until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.